I'm curious to hear from each of you, because you've been in the E&S market for so long, that tends to be a place for more emerging risks, things that other carriers aren't necessarily comfortable with from a risk perspective. But today, in today's insurance landscape, what are some of the emerging risks that are driving innovation in the E&S market that you haven't seen historically?
Well, I think, in New England and in our area, you're obviously seeing the tier one, or what most people call the coastal regions, where insurers are, the standard market insurers are less, or they're more reluctant to take on high capacity accounts because of the windstorm exposure or because of the flooding exposure. So that's really an emerging risk, in that we have to be able to then accommodate the vacuum that's left behind by the standard markets. And even though the standard markets' appetite is increasing, they're still staying away from the coast. So we try and take advantage of that by being nimble and being able to have the capacity and the aggregates through our Lloyd's brokers to be able to accommodate the gap that's being left by the standard market. There are obviously wildfires that are happening out on the West Coast that doesn't necessarily affect here on the in New England area, but the ability to fight the wildfires and to have forestry management is going to then have an effect on the insurance pricing, and whether or not a certain area has got forestry management in place or not, and will that impact the pricing on insurance in those areas. So there are various different areas. There are specific segments of the marketplace, such as active shooter coverage, which is an emerging market. There's cyber liability, but those are more not necessarily property related or Lloyd's related, but there are certain segments that are coming out. And then obviously there's the artificial intelligence that is coming out, which may have an impact on certain aspects as well. Another area that we see is the cannabis industry almost coming into liquor liability with the drinks that are infused with THC. And is liquor liability going to respond to an inebriated person drinking a THC drink or not? And those are some of the legal aspects that we have to address as well that are coming out in our area. So I'm not sure if that helps, but those are some of the things we see in our area.
Yeah, and Tony, I agree. And you touched on California. I think that's a huge challenge for the insurance market. To work out a solution as to find the insurance capacity down there. And I think it's not an emerging risk as such, but we need to find a solution. To be able to insure in California. The wildfire was an exceptional event and a tragic event as well. And, insurance is about a force for good and rebuilding people's properties in areas where they have losses. One of the things that I've been quite fortunate to see, I think, in my time is, again, how insurance can be a force for good. And there's something that we're proud of, I think, within Howden as a group. It's called Humanity Insured, and it's to provide parametric cover for farmers in Kenya. Who would never historically have had access to an insurance product. They have to invest in their crops, they buy their crops, but if they have a drought, they lose everything. Well, we're able to offer them a solution for the technology that's available out there through satellite imagery. If there's drought, they pay money, which means that they can reinvest the following year in their crops and keep their children in school. So, it's how we make insurance available to more people as well, because they might not necessarily have emerging risks, they're existing risks that we haven't found a solution for at this moment in time.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd add, it's if you look at the U.S. property market, the E&S has always been kind of the market that would take the stuff that nobody else wanted, or companies couldn't find a way to make money. So they would bail on classes or territories, and that opened up opportunities in the E&S side for us to try to find solutions. On the flip side of that, what happens is, especially in a territory like New England, there's a lot of companies that may bail on California business because they just can't find a way to make it work. So they say, okay, well, where can we make this up? Well, let's go to the Northeast because we think it's vanilla. And they start writing classes of business that maybe they're not really experienced in, that really should be in the E&S side. So they'll take some of our what we call vanilla business, but it should be E&S. So that kind of leaves us with kind of a pot of accounts and classes of business that are tough to place and that are, that have had losses that are not as desirable. And we see that back and forth, accounts going back to the standard market, then they get a taste of it and then they kick it back to the E&S market. So our market's always, fluctuating on what's traditional E&S business and what's standard market business. And I think these, catastrophes keep happening. Carriers keep jumping out of classes or territories. That opens the door for us. So, we're kind of sit and wait and see what they do, and just hope that they don't come back and try to take our vanilla E&S business. So it's ever changing.